So, hello everyone. I'm Ankur. I'm the founder and CEO of Nuclei, where we build products to help banks in their digital transformation journey. And today we have a very interesting guest on our podcast, Raveesh, who is SVP and Head of Digital Business at Induslnd Bank. Raveesh has had a very interesting career trajectory, and we'll definitely dive deep into that later on during the podcast. Welcome, Raveesh. Welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is keeping safe.
Yeah, we need to, absolutely. So Raveesh, before we get into what interesting stuff you're doing at the bank, I just wanted to slightly touch upon your journey. You are an engineer, then you did an MBA, you were working with a couple of banks, and then you moved to McKinsey. And for a decent amount of time, you were working at McKinsey, and now last year you moved again back to Induslnd Bank. So I primarily want to understand, how did the stint with McKinsey change your perspective about banking in general, and also why did you move to bank again?
Yeah, so interesting stories, right? And all of these are always interesting stories, right? So I think I started my career with two banks, and one of the bank is where actually I got an opportunity to work directly as a client of McKinsey and Company, right? So that's where specifically I got to understand that what it is about taking a view and understanding the entire perspective of what banks top managements go through, right? So basically being in the boardroom, understanding that what is the entire boardroom talking about, right? So that perspective was very interesting, and that led me, and that stint was very enjoyable, right? And it was the work was there, but it was actually at a very different pace and at a very different scale. So post that, at some point I decided that okay, this should be one of the destinations for me in my career. And yeah, so I was obviously working towards it, and luckily after a couple of years I did get an opportunity to interview with the firm. And luckily, because a lot of it is luck, while you can prepare, but landed up with a job offer with the firm. And what the next 7.5 years were amazing, right? Because what it gave me was not just a perspective into banking, but open doors of digital for me, because I was not doing digital before I ended up in McKinsey. And also help me understand that okay, what is it to do, let's say, a sales transformation or a digital transformation in a non-banking world? Because see, you can learn a lot from banking, but unless and until you get learnings from outside of your sector and you understand what is happening in different sectors, then you will be providing very good experience to your customers. But it's always good to first unlearn and then bring in learnings from different sectors and then provide a better experience. I think that's what McKinsey taught me, right, specifically. And yeah, at some point I wanted to do digital transformations, build digital business full time, right? I wanted to do this 100% of the time, which at some point wasn't possible because of XYZ reasons within the firm. So I took this was a very good opportunity that came my way, that I got to do this 100% of my time. And yeah, here I am at Induslnd, which is one of the top 6 private banks in the country, leading something that I like, which is digital business. And yeah, building interesting products and interesting experiences for the customers.
So one of the key things which we noticed when we spoke earlier was that you were quite different from most of the bankers in one way, that you understood business as well as you understood tech, right? And then that combination is very uh, rare to find. Uh, Also, you spoke about frameworks and mental models, right? So you're obviously creating a niche for yourself, and I'm assuming your experience with McKinsey had a lot to do in shaping you in that manner. But now that you're back at Induslnd, your business understanding as well as your tech understanding, plus your applications of frameworks and mental models, like how does that help you in your day-to-day decision making and team management? If you can just give us a few examples.
So let me maybe take 3 specific examples, right? First is about, see, digital needs to understand business, business needs to understand digital, right? And in order to, let's say, make the entire orchestration happen, you need to have certain frameworks, certain structures to make it happen, right? Because otherwise there are some, let's say if I take one project example, a big project example, there will be some 30 plus different integrations that will happen with different entities outside the bank, different entities within the bank as well. So you need to have certain structured processes to make this happen. I think that's what is one of the most important things. And for anyone in business, right? I think it's important, if you need to understand the levers of business, right? And you need to then understand that how those levers of business you can also, or how these levers will work in a digital world. So I think that becomes an interesting play. And on the other side, for example, for a person who's in business, can deep dive and, let's say segue into digital once they understand the base experience. But what they do require is the entire capacity to, learn new things, right? Because in the world of digital, by the way, what was there yesterday will not be there tomorrow. So you need to actually have that kind of an inquisitiveness to keep learning. And also, you should be at peace that something that you learn today might become redundant tomorrow. So I think that is something that is critical. And for a digital business leader, by the way, what is more important is understanding of whether things can happen or not happen and how quickly they can happen. So if that kind of understanding you can build, it actually becomes easier. Like for example, when I started out, I obviously, there were problems, or I was trying to figure out that how do you make STP percentages higher, right? So I then started learning about things which obviously I didn't know, but there is something that you can do called orchestration as a service, right? So now if you can orchestrate, you obviously need to build certain workflows at the back end. But orchestration would essentially mean that something that comes in journey, in, let's say, app step 5 or 6, you can actually bring it upfront in step 2 basis the rules that you can configure. But that rules have to be configured in a microservice or a service at the back end. So basically the point is, you use digital to solve business problems, right? And you need to know what kind of problems can be solved using digital. So I think that's where, it becomes very interesting. And that's where any person's inquisitiveness, if it takes the better of him, then he will land up in the right place,
Awesome,
right?
awesome. That's a good answer. Now, obviously, you're bringing a very big change at the bank. And before we started recording, we were discussing about uh, the new product that you're working on. If you can just give us a brief background about what you're working on, what are the key challenges that you have faced while developing this, and what are the key problems that this will solve for the bank as well as for the bank's customers.
Yeah. So I'll keep it limited. I might not be able to divulge a lot of the details around it, but basically, essentially, what we are trying to provide is a proposition, and that proposition is going to be for major age groups, but yeah, aim towards the millennials. I think that's what, essentially, the maximum. If you see India's demographic dividend, it's the maximum in the category of 25 to 40-year-old. And these are the guys, or these are all the people who are actually earning pretty decently as well. Obviously, some of them are in the formal sector, some of them in the informal sector, but this is the demographic dividend that India should, is very, very proud of, right? Now, for this particular segment, the idea is that what we are doing is the entire proposition is actually built on a completely different tech stack and a digital stack. And even the digital services, some of them we are using, but majority of them are, we are trying to see which is the best digital service out there, and then ascertaining that using this service will help the consumers in estimating the right experiences for them as well. So the idea is it's built on a completely different stack, and we'll be able to move at a very different speed, and there will be a very different agility that we'll have. So see, the bank had its own set of digital stack. It served them very well, right? It was built in the 2010s earlier. It served them for the entire decade. But whether the same stack will serve the bank for the 2020s, it is still a question that we are grappling with, and hence we are thinking ahead of the future, and we are building this entire proposition on a different tech stack. The functionality and the functional stack is also going to be something that the bank doesn't have. Obviously, base functional stack, whatever we have, we will reuse it. But beyond that, we will end up actually delivering a host, a bunch of new functional service. And the third thing, right? So one is obviously tech stack. Number two is the function stack, and the third thing that we are trying to provide is ensure that we keep our pace with the pace of what the customer is thinking, right? So hence the experiences are going to be very, very new experiences, or something that the millennials are more used to. Because what we realize is that at the end of the day, see, you are just an app, right, on the phone of a consumer, right? And the consumers are using the Hotstars, the Netflixes, right, the Amazons of the world, etc. So if you can't compete with the same kind of experience, then somewhere the consumer might not want to use you as a product, right? So I think that's the thought process. So experience, um, tech stack, and the functional and the product stack, right? I think this is what we are changing, and for specifically the millennial sort of a customer, and then that will get extended to the other segments. But yeah, that's what we are trying to do, and that will help us become more competitive than a lot of other players in the market, right?
Okay, wish you the best for that. Um, let's also talk about account aggregator, and Induslnd is obviously one of the key partner banks. Where do you see the key opportunities here, and what level of change do you think this will potentially bring in the market?
It's a very interesting concept by Sehmati and RBI. I think all of us are moving towards a particular goal over there while we are establishing the ecosystem. But the ecosystem will take its time. Let me caution everyone: it's not going to be ready in a matter of 3 months. I think we are all live. Majority of the banks are live, but still some of the major banks are yet to come on board, right? But this is a very interesting thing where a lot of banks are investing, because this is the future, right? See, at the end of the day, what it will solve are specifically, again, if I have to look at the use cases, there will be three primary kind of use cases. The first is the discovery, right? Users right now find it difficult to discover all their accounts in one place, right? When it's time for filing taxes, you do end up referring to the AIS, or whatever the the NSDL, and the income tax websites try and at least provide you in a consolidated manner. There is a new portal AIS that was launched this year, but you will still find that not every bank information is available, unfortunately, over there. They are also, I think, trying to get it out there. But account discovery becomes an important aspect when it comes to just understanding and managing your overall relationships, right? So that is obviously the first and the primary, the easiest use case to solve. Number two becomes when it comes to from a lending aspect. Now, there are products like credit card, personal loan, and this is, I'm right now talking about the retail side of it. I think despite being 30 years of its existence, which is, I'm just talking about a credit card, 1992, the first credit card was launched in India. Till date, after 3 decades, the credit card is still not crossed. Basically, there are less than 3 crores consumers who are on credit cards. There are less than almost 7 crore cards that exist, right? It's actually very, very minuscule for a product which is actually very interesting. But essentially, what happens is you're not able to underwrite people because of the data not being there. Now, what account aggregator will try and deliver is, again, at a consolidated level, try and understand the wealth, try and understand what exactly people are keeping in balances, and be able to underwrite them on the fly. And hopefully, right, with new and innovative models like a BNPL sort of a thing that is coming on board, and is very, very people are happily getting onto the BNPL wagon with new products plus the old products. We should be able to underwrite way more customers using the AA framework, right? I think
Okay.
on the lending side, that's the big use case. And then similarly extending this to the SME side of it, where one of the things that still doesn't happen on the GST is matching of bills, right? Which is, people just fill up a GSTN1, which is they present what is according to their income, right? But you don't offset the bills that happen. Now, once that happens, then the true tax discovery also will happen, and then on the back of it, again, MSMEs can get access to the. So with A, there is a parallel portal that is getting made again by the same Sehmati is leading that particular bit along with iSpirit. And hopefully, and that is still far away, right? Maybe 1 year or 1.5 years from now. But that will then enable a similar discovery from on a lending side for the SMEs, right? So these are primarily the three use cases that I see right now happening. But again, caution, I think we are still slightly far off in the journey where this will unfold. Maybe in a couple of years time you'll find this thing live, but you have to get onto the bandwagon right now.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Um, let's move on from account aggregator, which obviously will create a very wider platform. Let's talk about platforms in general. Like, and people eventually say that at the end of the day, platforms will form the interface with the customers. I believe banks are also a platform with a significant distribution already in place. So, how is Induslnd leveraging this distribution in order to become a platform business? Are there any interesting initiatives which the bank has taken already, which have worked, which have not worked, and in future, what are the initiatives the bank is taking?
Yeah, I think the bank is in a very specific, very interesting place. I think, as I said, right, from a retail consumer perspective, there is a entire we are trying to create a platform so that we can get the products onto the platform, and then the idea is once you have the platform, which is by the way reusable, modular, and scalable, you can actually then expand it in the right manner, right? And then your our distribution per se, right, which is actually one of the better in the industries when you compare and add a subsidiaries, right? You when you add a subsidiary, it becomes greater than 8,000 odd units or branches or specific offices that exist in the country, which is actually fairly good, and next only to, let's say, the HDFCs and the SBI of the world, right? So the idea is that once you have built the platform, right, which where you have all the digital business, the retail individual businesses out there, right, whether it is wealth businesses like mutual fund trading, whether you have like the insurance businesses added to it, whether you have the lending products like credit cards, BNPL, line of credit, right? All of these interesting products, and obviously the stable, the bread and butter, which is this, the savings account, the FDs of the world. When you get all of these together, and you get them onto a platform which is per se not dependent on an individual behind it, then the scalability using the distribution that we have will be like fantastic to work with, right? Similarly on the SME side, right? The point is that once you have this in the right manner, the scalability will not be a challenge, and you'll be able to do digital business, which right now I think the banks are just started to do this in the past 1 year. And unfortunately, while COVID has struck, I think COVID has at least shaped the thinking or turbocharged the thinking in this sphere per se. So that's where we are, and I think distribution business, whichever banks have a distribution business in the right frame, I think they will use that to expand this further. But I think beyond that, banks also don't want to expand the distribution business, right? Which is whatever is there in the right shape and right place. I think people would want to expand on that, and it's not
Okay.
easy to expand the distribution business, right? So hence, yeah, platforms become important, and you can completely make it a multiplier effect when you have the right distribution channel, uh, specifically propagating the platforms.
Okay. A lot of interesting things are happening at Induslnd and definitely with your team. To close out this conversation, let me ask you a very personal question. Uh, tell me the kindest thing that someone has done for you.
Kindest. So see, kindest things would be specifically there are many, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what keeps you going, right? As an individual, when you are kind to people and when people are kind to you, right? I think those are the instances and stories that stick on. But I think primarily, banks per se, right? Are not very known for the agility in decision making, etc. But I think as the pandemic set in, right, giving the flexibility that our top management gave to us to even and you have, so obviously there are in a decade long career, I think there are many instances, right? And that's what keeps an individual going, right? When you are kind to people, and then people are also kind to you, right? And that's what keeps it going. But I think the power, or I saw the potential when you combine this with policies, right? I think then it became extremely powerful. So and I'll talk about two instances maybe, right? Not just one. But we have this very amazing concept where for you take a step back at the end in 1 year, and on one particular day, basically in the firm you would actually chart out these thank you cards, right? And the thank you cards would be available for you centrally, wherever you want to keep, and they would be like nice cards, and you would actually just write out these notes, a handwritten note, because that's a personal gesture. And then the firm would actually make it possible for you to deliver it, whether it is to alums or whether it is to existing employees or whoever, right? And they will take care at a structural level, right? And there would be this day called a thank you day, right, where you take a step back, and while it is always important to do this on a regular basis, but on that day you then got to realize that what is the kind of impact that you are having on other people's lives, and when they appreciate you for small things which might be very insignificant to you, but you have done this, it actually amplifies that the entire message that you need to do this and you need to keep doing this again and again. I think that stood out for me out of all the uh, things specifically. And then the other thing again, right, structurally somebody made it happen. And in fact a lot of other folks also, whoever obviously is in that space is able to take advantage of it, was we had a very specific caregiver policy, right? And basically caregiver means that you take a person, and then these are long trainings, right? Specifically, you take a person who's a caregiver. These policies were typically for working mothers, right? That would take either their husband or and and I just challenged the policy. I said, boss, and this was just after birth of my first child, and I was being sent on a training. And I told them that obviously as a caregiver, like my wife needs my support right now, and it's in the first 6 months sort of a thing. So why would this policy not get extended for her, right? And the while end my wife did not ended up traveling, but the point is that the firm actually rallied behind to make that possible, and took an exception, saying that no, if obviously the person is saying that he is one of the two caregivers, why it should not extend to them, right? So structurally something is possible. And the point is that the firm and your companies, whichever companies you are associated with, if they are willing to move the extra mile, right, with you, I think then the connect that you establish with that workplace, I think is at a very different level. So I think both these things are a classic example of where if the organizations take that extra mile, you can establish a very deep emotional connect with your workplace, right? Which you can't beat, right? Remuneration, anything else, anything tangible also can't beat that at the end of the day.
Kindness as a policy. That's the keyword which I'm going to take away. And
Yeah, kindness.
I'm definitely going to borrow this idea of writing thank you cards, because uh, I mean, nowadays, of course, very few people are in a habit of writing physical cards. But when you actually get a thank you card of this nature, it hits a completely different emotion.
It
So,
brings a smile on your face, right? Whatever you're doing in whatever situation you are in, it just brings a smile that that's all it does, right? And it makes you more glued to the what is happening. Be aware of your surroundings. It does a lot of things basically.
correct. So that's an awesome way to close this conversation, Ravish. I'm really thankful for you to come on to the podcast, and looking forward to working with you in future. Thank you so much, Ravish.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine, Ankur. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.